Bom dia a todos. O evento é em inglês, então, antes de mais nada, queria que quem quisesse ouvir a tradução, que fosse no ícone mais e selecionasse aí a opção do intérprete. So, good morning, everyone. As always, a pleasure to be here with my friend and very respected colleague, Isabel. Tom Fox, who we've been doing this now for a couple of years. I always learn many things during these webinars. And Viviane, who Isabel will so kindly introduce as our special guest today.
Yes, thank you so much, Cynthia, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning. There are very special thanks to Tom Fox for getting up so early. It's 6:30 in Houston where he lives. So, Tom, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's our last Breakfast with Tom Fox of 2024. We have dates for next year already, and we're so happy to be here for this holiday season. We had the honor of counting on the presence of Viviane O'Connor. She is a senior compliance manager at Dover Fueling Solutions, which is a very, very dear client. We have done a lot of work together. Viviane collaborates to strengthening Dover's compliance program in North America and in Latin America. With a career of over 20 years in legal and compliance areas, Viviane has successfully led numerous high-impact compliance initiatives and many investigations, right, Viviane? She holds an MBA from University of São Paulo in digital business and an MBA from the Catholic University of Rio Grande do Sul, PUC, in compliance, audit, and controllership. Outside of work, Viviane volunteers in an NGO focused on supporting women in social vulnerability. Thank you. So, again, thank you all. It's wonderful to have you. And Cynthia?
Thanks, Isabel. So I think by now, is this our 12th breakfast, Isabel, with Tom?
I think
Could
it's
be.
more.
Is it more? Yes, it
More.
could be.
Yes.
So Tom Fox, for those of you who don't know, is known as the compliance evangelist. He's really an expert in compliance issues globally. He monitors Brazil closely, and it's such a treat to have him here with us on a quarterly basis. For those of you who want to ask questions, please make sure that you put your questions in the P&R or Q&A box, and Viviane will be moderating the event. Thank you again, Tom, and we look forward to hearing your contributions today.
Before we start, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands about the interpreter, Danielle, is that you have to go into mais, right? And Cynthia, help me out
Yes,
here.
yes. So I was told you go to the three buttons, so more or mais, you'll have the option in the audio settings.
Right. So that means that when Tom speaks his beautiful English, then you will hear Daniel's beautiful Portuguese. You have your choice. But when you place your questions in the Q&R, perguntas e respostas, or Q&A, do so in English or in Portuguese, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Remember to identify yourself and the organization you're with. Thank you. Tom, without further ado.
Thank you so much, Isabella and Cynthia. I'm going to start with the following. On Monday night, I received the GOAT Award. Now, for those of you who may not understand the translation, GOAT is actually the highest level award you can get in America. So here's the GOAT, and it stands for greatest of all time. So that was a pretty big award.
I know.
If you see something that says I'm the GOAT, believe me, it's positive.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The thing I wanted to visit with you today, and what we've talked about, is the 2024 update to the evaluation of corporate compliance programs and what it means for you as a compliance professional. But I'm sure the one thing on everyone's mind on this call is, what does the new Trump administration mean for compliance, not only in America, but around the world? So let me say a few words about that. Donald Trump hates the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act for obvious reasons, but it's still the law, or as we would say in America, the law of the land. And in many ways, it is part of now the law of the world. And even if you're in a country like America or Brazil, where the very top of the administration may not make prosecution of anti-bribery, anti-corruption violations the top of their agenda, number one, they're not going to repeal those laws. So the laws are going to be in place. But more importantly, anti-corruption is now embedded in the business fabric, literally, of the world. So if you're a Brazilian company and you want to do business with an American company, whether that's as a sales agent, whether that's as a distributor, whether that's as a joint venture partner, whether that's even as a customer, that American company is going to demand you have a compliance program. If we flip that and my Tom Fox Energy company wants to come to Brazil and develop properties or work with a Brazilian company, that Brazilian company is going to say, we want to see your compliance program. And we want you to certify that you have a compliance program. And so compliance, it's a long-winded way of saying compliance is not going away. Compliance is here to stay. And it's here to stay because it's now part of the international business fabric, and we're all integrated together. But even more than the business to business aspect, if you want access to capital, you're going to have a compliance program. Now, that access can be in such places as the U.S. stock market, which requires a compliance program. If you have a Brazilian subsidiary, a U.S. subsidiary of a Brazilian company and you're publicly listed, you have to have a compliance program. If you want to have private equity investment, or you want to sell your company to a private equity company, you have to have a compliance program. If you want to borrow money from a bank, you have to have a compliance program. If you want to get insurance companies will look at your compliance program. So the reasons to have a compliance program, of course, they started with complying with the law, but they've now become a part of the business fabric across the world. And I've used Brazil and America as two examples, but you name any country in the world, England, Germany, even China, all have robust anti-corruption compliance laws. And what that has done is made it imperative that if you want to do business in those countries or with companies from those countries, you're going to have a compliance program. So please don't feel depressed, down, disheartened. There's going to be, all I can tell you is there'll be chaos. Where that chaos ends, I can't tell you that right now, but I can tell you that compliance will be there at the end of the chaos, however long that chaos ends, because it's now it's a part of doing business. And so there'll be changes, but with what I'm about to share with you about the evaluation of corporate compliance programs update, you'll see that even the U.S. Department of Justice is focusing much more on the business aspect of compliance and what does it mean inside of a corporation, as opposed to we're going to enforce the FCPA rigorously. So please do not be disheartened. We're all going to be here next month and we're all going to be here next year. So there. Okay, let's talk about the 2024 evaluation of corporate compliance programs, or the ECCP. I'm not quite sure what that translates to in Portuguese, but that's what it's called here, the ECCP. This is now either every year or every other year update or it's updated every couple of years at a minimum now. And it is fabulous information for the compliance professional, not only about what the Department of Justice expects, but how you can benchmark and measure your own compliance program. So you can use it in a variety of ways. There's three key highlights I want to give to you from the 2024 ECCP. Number one, there's a new focus on data, and that the Department of Justice sees data and data analytics as literally the backbone of a modern compliance program. I used to say that internal controls form the backbone, but now it's data. And there's a variety of ways the Department of Justice wants you to use data. Obviously, transaction monitoring has been for some time a key use of data to see if there's any anomalies in terms of spendings or creations of pots of monies to pay bribes. But now the department has expanded that use of data into areas we typically had not seen it used before. So one of those is with culture. And I think we've talked about culture on one of our breakfasts previously, but now the department wants you to look at your culture in a data-focused way. And what that means is you have to start to measure culture. Well, then the question becomes, well, Tom, how do you measure culture? Typically, we've measured culture in the past through surveys, workshops, town hall meetings, roundtables, something that allows employees to give information. That's been done in, I don't want to say an anecdotal way, but in a way that many lawyers are very comfortable with, which are asking questions, getting answers, writing those answers down, and figuring out what it means. That's what we're trained to do. But now the Department of Justice wants you to do this in a much more systematic way using data so that, one, you set a baseline of where your company corporate culture is. Two, you can see if there are any deficiencies or areas where say trust or speak up or listen up or any of the other areas that we talk about with culture, there are deficiencies. Do employees trust their leaders to model ethical behavior? Are employees confident if a hotline report's made? Not only will they be listened to, but there will be no retaliation, things like that. So you need to implement regular culture audits to provide a structured way to assess your corporate compliance culture and identify trends. With that data, you need to then plan a risk management strategy and then remediate areas which are substandard. And then you do that again on a go forward basis, whether it's every 6 months, whether it's every year. If you have a software tool that allows you to intake a large amount of information quickly and efficiently, that's the goal, I think, of what the department wants you to do. You need to enhance your transparency and communications. So we've moved from once a year anti-corruption training to effective training, focusing on targeting those employees who really need anti-corruption compliance training and people who may not need it as rigorously or robustly to receive at least an annual, to targeted training to get people to think about I don't need to know the specific rules and regulations. What I need to know is, and what I need to think about, is this the right thing to do? And if I have a question, how do I get that question answered? Do I pick up the phone and call my chief compliance officer? Is there a internal FAQ or a question and answer I can go to give me insight? Is there a compliance champion in my business unit I can go to? So transparency and communication has become much more critical. Next is integrating compliance with performance and incentives. Now, we've always had the Department of Justice talk about doing business ethically and in compliance should be a part of every employee's evaluation. And it should be a part of if you receive a discretionary bonus at the end of the year based upon either your own personal sales or profitability or the company's profitability, there should be a compliance component. They've re-emphasized that, and you need to now formally have a part of someone's discretionary bonus as a part of compliance. You're probably about to say, okay, Tom, how do we do that? Well, because in many ways, we don't measure compliance, or we don't measure doing business ethically in compliance. Well, number one, you're going to have to start measuring with some measure. But two, you can evaluate that. Have they done training? Have they, received communications? Have they asked questions? Is there anything they've done negatively around anti-bribery or anti-corruption or any other type of compliance? So 5, 10, even 20% of discretionary bonus can be part of or dedicated to a compliance. So, and that also means if someone violates your compliance program, were there any consequences? Did they lose 10% of their bonus? Did the company hold back a part of their bonus during an investigation? Those sorts of things. So those are really some of the big ones. And then the last one that I wanted to talk to you about is AI, because for the first time, the Department of Justice spoke to AI in compliance, and they laid out some specific requirements around AI governance. And these include, has the company assessed the risk of AI technologies, both internally and externally for the company? Has the company taken appropriate steps to mitigate any risk for the use of technology? And I would ask you to consider that's really no different than any other risk the DOJ has asked you to consider. So have you assessed your risk? Have you identified it, assessed it, and then put a risk management strategy in place? So that's really, I don't think anything new. And then, but you have to now do this in a formal, documented manner. Of course, you need to monitor and evaluate the results of that monitoring, and then certainly update or improve as and continuous improvement as a regular part of your business plan. And you need to ensure alignment with your company's code of conduct. So those are some of the key starting points, Isabel and Cynthia, that everyone needs to think about. So it's really those three areas: data, how are you using data, or maybe 4 areas: data and how are you using data, and is your compliance program data-based? Culture, how are you measuring culture, and how are you assessing culture, and how are you improving your culture? Incentives, do you have a specific component of everyone's incentive program is compliance and an evaluation of doing business ethically and in compliance a part of that incentive? And then finally, do you have an AI governance structure from compliance, or rather, it doesn't have to be from compliance, but it has to be in place. So those are the key points I wanted to raise. And with that, I can take any questions that you all might have at this point.
Wonderful, Tom. Thank you so much. we apologize for some of the challenges we've been having with interpreter room. Somehow, I have not been able to access it, and Tatiana just sending a message that they're activating the function. So I guess that we may proceed then, Pachi. Pachi, could you explain to us how then the participants can access Daniel and listen to the webinar in Portuguese, please?
Oi, pessoal, bom dia. A gente tem algumas pessoas que, por restrição da lei da LGPD, não está aparecendo para todo mundo. Então, se a sua organização não tiver aparecendo essa opção no mais, a gente acabou de disponibilizar a opção da própria transcrição escrita aqui pelo Teams. Então, você vai no mais, na mesma opção, está no gravar e transcrever. Aí vai aparecer aquela automática do Teams, que não é assim perfeita, igual o nosso intérprete maravilhoso, mas vai ser um recurso para quem não conseguir ativar para ouvir o intérprete, ok? Aí dúvidas podem colocar no chat que a gente vai tentando ajudar.
Muito obrigada. Thank you so much. Tom, that was such an interesting explanation by Tachi, saying that because of our privacy laws here in Brazil, some people's systems are block out whatever the function is, but it has to do with our protection, data privacy protection law. That's what it is. Well, anyway, extremely interesting. Viviane is our star today, so I will let her start with questions. But I have a lot of questions also. But later,
I have questions as well.
Later,
Yeah,
Viviane, please.
yeah. Hi, good morning, everyone. I just want to say one more time what an honor is to be here with such a, a group of very qualified people in the compliance area. So thank you again, Isabel, for the kind invite. We don't have any questions so far in the PNR area, but I do have one myself for you, Tom. Can you maybe share with us some examples of good practice regarding the use of artificial intelligence from a compliance perspective? Because it's such a new matter to everyone, and I have here and there some advices of best practice, but maybe you can share your views on that too, please.
Sure. So if you and I were sitting across the table and I was in your office and you posed that same question, I would probably start with two challenges for you, or two ways to think about AI and compliance. Number one, how can AI help you as a compliance officer? How can AI help you do compliance, to fully operationalize compliance? So number one is how can AI help you as a compliance officer, you in the compliance department, you as the compliance function, number one. Number two, think about it, I don't want to say externally, but outside the compliance department. So how could AI help your employees do business more ethically and in compliance? So we would start with those two questions. And because each one have a different answer. And let me start with number two, which is how can AI help my company do business more ethically and compliance, or the employee focused? And there, what I'm hearing and seeing is many companies struggling to create essentially an AI chatbot that employees can input questions and get an immediate answer. In my remarks, I talked about communication and what the department wants to see, that employees know where to go to ask questions. Well, if you had Vivian's AI compliance chatbot, that's where they could go, at least to start. And they could put in a question, I am in Angola. I am going to take a government official to dinner. How much is the limit I can spend on the dinner? well, I can't remember how. I think Angola is 5 hours ahead of Brazil. It may be that you're in bed and you can't answer that question, or it's a time, when you're not available for whatever reason. Well, if there's a chat bot and that chat bot has access to all of your company codes, policies, and procedures, it could give an answer. And so that person who might be sitting at the restaurant will know the answer. Something like that. So sort of a quick question that would be where the answer would be based on the learning model, which the AI is based on, meaning what's the data the AI is based on, could be a very powerful tool to answer questions. And that's one category of the use of AI I've heard many compliance professionals sort of struggle with, or at least say that's how you can help us immediately. But now let's turn to how could AI help you as the compliance professional or the compliance department. And let's keep with that example for Angola. You receive information that an employee has taken a foreign government official to dinner. You've got the documentation of how much they've spent. That's obviously one data point. And you say, that's odd. That's the first one that's someone's asked a question on. Maybe I should go look at other expenditures in Brazil. And so you get the from accounting or from the chief financial officer, the entertainment expenses in Angola over the past year. And it's a large amount of numbers. And you notice that almost everything is below the threshold. So everything appears to be right on where it needs to be. Well, then you look a little bit deeper and you find, there's a lot of people from one department of one government agency that are being entertained. And so you actually take all of that information. Now you could go through and do this manually and it could take hours. But you put all of that information in ChatGPT or an AI GPT, and you start asking questions. And you input the name, of course, of the people who are entertained, the department, and you begin an AI in 60 seconds gives you an analysis of this is unusual or an anomaly. It doesn't tell you corruption's occurred, but it gives you information in literally 60 seconds to say, you might want to look at this because we have 33 dinners with one government agency all below the threshold. How do you have 33 dinners in a year? That's, 3 a month. Is that too many? Is that not enough? Is it a large contract we're working on? And AI can even give you, I did this demonstration literally at a conference where I took this example and typed it into ChatGPT in front of everyone. And then I asked, what's the percentage that corruption could occur? And, it popped up 80%. So now, once again, that's not telling you corruption occurs. That's not saying your employees are doing business not ethically and not in compliance, but it's saying based upon these facts, there's a high percentage of corruption, and you as a compliance professional need to look at that. Now, you probably could have made that analysis and you probably could have done it, within a week, sitting at your desk going through every one of those. But if you get that information in 60 seconds or 5 minutes, that could be a powerful tool to you in the compliance department to then go to the next level of review. So those are maybe two different ways to think about how it can be used. One is the employee facing. Can you give employees more information, quicker information, literally instant information that they may need? And then two, can you as a compliance professional utilize that information in more of a review process to determine is something unusual here? Is something an anomaly here? Is there something that needs to be looked at greater. So maybe those might be two ways you could think about it, both internal, meaning you and the compliance department, and external. I don't mean external to your company. I mean external to the compliance department. How can you use AI to help your own employees?
Okay.
Tom, I think the benefits of using, I mean, from a risk management perspective, the use of AI is really an amazing tool. I do think, I mean, my perception, and you're the expert here, do you think the government was a bit premature and invasive and even commenting about the use of AI?
Well, first of all, Cynthia, you're an expert too, so you don't have to defer to me. Number one. And number two, actually, I go the other way. I think they were way too late.
Really? Okay.
People have been clamoring for this type of guidance and saying, actually, yes, clamoring. And so I would just say it's way too late. But two things. One is governments move very slowly. But two is AI's moving not at the speed of light. I mean, we're moving at Star Trek warp speed. So what may have been not simply relevant, but appropriate in September, we may be way beyond that. And people are saying, okay, more guidance, more guidance, more guidance. So, yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Viviane.
No, please. It was a great question. I have one other regarding the data-driven compliance program, as you were saying. Does it mean, in your view, that the companies need to invest more in automation and in having more accurate data processing and storage and so on? Does it needs to be an investment in ERP, for instance, in consolidation of data? Because here in Brazil, we still see sometimes big companies with relevant revenue that have a lot of manual procedures and, paperwork, hard copy documents, because it is aligned with how business is done in Brazil sometimes also. So do you see a need in investment in companies investing in that?
So absolutely. And let me just pick up on the last point you said. This is aligned with how business is done in Brazil. I thought you were going to say, this is aligned with how we've always done it. Mm-hmm. And that sort of mentality is one of the worst mentalities you can have, because just because we did it one way in the past doesn't mean it's the right way going forward, or we've always done it this way, that sort of thing. But when you begin to have those discussions internally, it's not the use of data for compliance, it's the use of data for the business. And yes, there's a compliance requirement from the Department of Justice that compliance must have access to all data across all data silos in a company. So that's sort of one, and that's now 4 years old. But the use of data will help a business run more efficiently. I say that effective compliance equates to more efficient business processes, equates to greater profitability. And anytime you can have consolidated data, or at least access to the data, if it's not consolidated, that's going to drive more efficient business. And I can't tell you all the ways that will make you more efficient until you get the data. And the data may give you insights into areas that you might have thought were traditional business operations. Compliance has no part in, and they may not have in the past, but that's in the past. And if your company can be run more efficiently with a more sophisticated ERP system, or even having an ERP system. I was telling someone Monday night at this awards ceremony, in 2005, I was working for Halliburton, and Halliburton, I didn't know it at the time, but was under FCPA investigation, and then there was a big settlement. And I was in the contracts department, and my boss came to me and said, we want you to review every agent contract in the world. I said, okay, how many? He told me, he said, we think. I said, well, what do you mean we think? I said, well, they didn't know because there was no database for agents. And so they had to wait literally 6 months till payments had been made to other companies. And then they had to figure out manually what those payments were for. And then they sent me a spreadsheet. And it was all because it was a manual process. And it took 6 months just to tell me who to go to review. Now, that was a long time ago. But if you're still using those sort of manual processes, when a regulator comes knocking and you say, we'll be back to you in 6 months, they're going to conclude you do not have a very good compliance program. So having the ERP system, having the ability to have the data in one place that you can get access to actually makes you a much better run company. And that ties into some of the remarks I opened with about why compliance is here to stay, because having access to that data will make you a better run company.
We have a great question here in the P&R section from Ludmila. Ludmila works for HDI Group. It's an insurance company. And the question from Ludmila is, she's requesting you to speak a little bit more about how to measure a compliance culture. If there are examples of practice of companies that use data to measure a compliance culture.
Sure. So I've got a good example of that, but let me think where it is. And while I'm trying to figure it out, I will tell you. So start to measure some of the basics. So I mentioned those a little bit earlier. Do employees trust that management is going to say and do the right thing? Is there a way for employees to speak up? Do they feel safe in speaking up? Are they listened to when they speak up? Is there retaliation when they speak up? What about when they speak up of non-compliance violations, meaning someone says, I think I can give us a better way to make a widget. Are they listened to? Are there health and safety issues that are being ignored by the company? Are there examples where employees did the right thing, but didn't receive any recognition? On the flip side, if they did do the right thing, did they receive some recognition for that? Meaning, were they given an award? Were they publicly thanked? Did they get an email from compliance or the CEO for doing the right thing? There's about 70 different ways you can do all of this and measure it. And happy to do another breakfast where I kind of go through all of those. But yes, there's a way for you to do that. The key is to measure that and you do it through a scale, 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, and you get a number. And with that number, then you say, here's where we are, where do we want to be? And you move towards that.
Okay, great.
Great.
Isabel.
If I may, because I'm really, when Tom mentioned that there are 3 key highlights that he wanted to explain to us about the ECCP. The one that really caught my attention, Tom, is that the DOJ is expecting that the companies assess their AI governance. And that to me is very new, because we're finding that here in Brazil, the companies don't even want to assess the risk in ABAC nowadays. You were telling us about how Trump may be chaos in the United States. I can tell you that we're going a little bit into a phase like this where companies are saying, why do I have to worry about compliance, when we have this administration that Brazil has nowadays. So I'm really interested in hearing about, if you could elaborate a little more on the risk assessment on AI.
Sure. So I would ask you to think about it in a way that you're currently thinking about any risk. This is no different than any other tool, any other risk, any other situation you have faced as a compliance professional. And whatever the situation is, and I'm going to use risk because it's I think something everyone's going to be familiar with, if not comfortable, you're going to a new country. In fact, you're going to the great state of Texas, and you say, I wonder what the risk is in the state of Texas. Is it different than the risk in every other state in America? And the answer is, of course. We're the great state of Texas. There are different risks here. Well, what are those risks? And they may be a governmental risk. There may be a risk of doing business with energy companies in America that you may think, they've had a lot of problems. I need to be very careful here because, El Gringo's Norte. I can speak Spanish for a moment. It could be, I've been, El Gringo Tomas for a long time, proudly. It could be banking risk. It could be the risk of, doing business in the second biggest state in America. It doesn't matter what it is, but you have to assess that risk and figure out how to manage that. And the same is true for AI. AI is just another tool. It may be bigger, faster, quicker. It may be, you may say it's going to be a game changer, but it's a tool. And so how do you manage the risks of that tool? One of the biggest risks is, what are the biases that are in your AI chatbot? If you go to ChatGPT and you type in a question, you're going to get the bias of every piece of information that ChatGPT uses. If you have a chatbot that I use in the example with Vivian that is limited to your company policies and procedures, hopefully there'll be less bias, so you'll get a more unbiased answer. Number one. Number two is ChatGPT is not infallible. It can make mistakes. I was using it to get some information on a famous financial crimes trial in the United States that I had followed. It was back in the 90s. And one of the reasons I followed it was one of the defendants' wife was a woman named Linda Carter. Linda Carter was the first Wonder Woman. So I'm a guy, I like Wonder Woman. I followed that trial. And so I typed in a question about, and the defendant, his name was Robert Altman. So I typed in a question about Robert Altman's wife. And I came back with an answer that said Robert Altman's wife was the daughter of the other co-defendant. Well, I knew that was wrong. So I typed in another question which said, please delineate the relationship between Robert Altman's wife and the family of the other defendant. And it came back, oh, we are sorry, we made a mistake. Robert Altman's wife was Linda Carter. Well, first of all, AI apologized to me, which was nice, but they recognized they'd made a mistake. And the other, I don't know if this story has made its way to Brazil, but there was either a famous, infamous, or funny story in America where in a legal court case, a lawyer had ChatGPT write the brief. He turned it into the court, and it turned out ChatGPT had made up cases and they were false. And we all laughed, stupid lawyer, da-da-da. But the bigger point was ChatGPT, one, can make mistakes, but two, you as the professional, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a compliance professional, whether you're an internal audit professional, you need to understand this is a first draft. Never take what ChatGPT has given you and simply turn it into an email, make it a report, turn it over to somebody else without you making sure, one, it's correct, but also making it yours. So can I get a blog post from ChatGPT? You bet. Does it sound like Tom Fox? No way. And so think of it as a first draft. Now, it can be a competent first draft and give you the basis of something that can be very useful to you, but it's not infallible. It's not you. There are ways to make it you, but we're not quite there yet. So hopefully that will answer the question.
Yes, thank you.
Can I go back to the
Vivian, yes.
culture
Yes,
question
yes.
because I was able to find. So here's some of the things that we measure on culture: ethics, organizational beliefs and values, the focus of your organization, the clarity of your mission, the values of the people who work at your company. Do you make quality decisions? Is there employee engagement? How about the speed of the implementation of your ideas or suggestions? Is there trust in your organization? Is there communication both from upper management down, and is there communication from lower management back up? What about innovation and change in your organization? Is there safety? Is there a safe place for you to speak up? What's the strength of your leadership? These are some of the things that I measure with a tool I and a couple of people have developed that I'm more than happy to talk to you about. But there are multiple things that you can measure in your culture on a go-forward basis.
Thank you. Viviane, there are wonderful questions by someone who is very famous in our compliance field.
Yes, we have a great question here in the P&R section again, about how we a chief compliance officer could leverage on artificial intelligence to measure and track the tone at the top. It's linked to culture, right? And I think we can take this question now in continuation.
Yes, and then there's a great question also by Rogéria Jeremecki in the chat. Put it in the chat. And you know, I'm very interested in hearing Tom's opinion. We just need to go a little faster so that we can fit everything in.
Yes, I'm sorry, I haven't seen the chat. I'm sorry. It's
no problem.
Indeed
No
a great
problem.
question.
First of all, I've actually written an entire memo on measuring tone at the top. So whoever asked that question, if they want that memo, I'm absolutely happy to share that. If they'll email me. Okay. Number one. And number two is you need to measure, do they say the right thing and do they do the right thing? Now let's start with say the right thing because that in many ways is easier. How often does your CEO, how often does your senior management, how often does your executive leadership team talk about compliance? It can be, and I don't mean a 60-minute lecture with PowerPoints, slides. I mean, do they start a meeting with a compliance moment? When they start an employee town hall, do they say something like, you know, we're here to do business the right way? That's talking about compliance. What people don't do is document that. Because every time a CEO, every time an executive leader, every time a senior manager says something, if you document it, you begin to build a library that you can show a regulator, we are saying the right things. Now, for doing the right things, and it can be a meeting, it can be a town hall, it can be a message online, it can be an email communication. Anytime there's communication, document that. And you, as if you're an in-house CCO, you can work with your executive leadership team or your CO to give them the information. They don't have to make it up and say it themselves. You can give it to them and explain to them the importance is you're documenting their compliance with the hallmarks of an effective compliance program. In terms of doing business the right way, it's things like, are you doing business typically with other companies that have compliance programs? Are you, doesn't mean you can't do business with or in high-risk jurisdictions. Are you putting the risk management strategies in place? Is there business you've turned down? Have you turned down M&A deals? Have you modified your M&A deals to have compliance concerns taken care of? At a recent presentation, a woman compliance professional who was part of the M&A team said that she actually would get information on the target's compliance program and they would drive the price down because their compliance program wasn't as robust and they knew they were going to have to spend money after the transaction closed. So there's a variety of ways you can show that, but there are ways to do that. But the key is you have to document it. You're probably doing it already. Your CEO's probably doing it already in some form. You can get them to do it more, but no one's ever documenting that. And I had a long discussion with a CCO. So, I can't tell him to do these things. I'm like, well, yes, you can, number one. And number two, explain to him by documenting these, you're protecting yourself.
Excellent. Viviane, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, so the question from Rogério Jeremek, Tom, what advice would you give to a senior compliance professional that has lost the job due to social political environment not favorable to compliance, let's say? What advice would you have for such professionals?
She's talking about Brazil, not
Yes.
Trump yet, okay?
Not America.
Lula administration.
Well, I had a friend that called me yesterday with that same question, but it was from America. So let me tell you what I told him. Number one, you're not going to get a job in 30 days. Understand it's going to take 6 months, and it's going to take you, reconnecting with a lot of people, LinkedIn or directly, however you may be, but make sure you get your name out there and doing something. You can do social media outreach. You can write a blog. You can be on a podcast, but make sure, your name is out there. Number one. Number two, here's the most important thing. Take some time and do something for yourself. Do not get back on the rat race grind of the corporate world. When that happened to me, I had always wanted to watch silent movies. And so I bought a bunch of silent movie DVDs and watched them. It doesn't matter what you've wanted to do, but take some time to do something for yourself that you've never had the chance to do. Whether that's recharging the batteries, whether it's just saying, I've always wanted to do this, whether you're a woman and a mom and you've got 4 kids, you've had a job and you're doing everything, take some time for yourself, whatever it is. And it doesn't matter what it is. It may be watching soap operas. That's fine too. Whatever it is. And then number 3 is understand that your skills as a compliance officer translate into a wide variety of other skills in other areas. You may be a chief compliance officer, you may be a compliance professional, but you may be just the thing a startup needs because your perspective is so different. So don't limit yourself to thinking, I have to go back into the corporate world and I have to be a compliance officer. The skills you have as a compliance officer are so myriad. They are accounting, they are finance, they are internal controls, they're obviously legal, they're communications, they're building relationships, they're building trust and using persuasion, because unfortunately as compliance professionals, I've not found the compliance hammer that you can beat over people's heads to say, do this or else. You don't get to do that in compliance. That's the job of the general counsel. So you have a wide variety of skills you may not recognize. And one thing I have learned, took me a long time to learn, is I've always known when the universe closes one door, the universe opens another. But part 2 of that is you have to have the courage to walk through that door.
Yes.
And walk through that door, because that's why I'm sitting in front of you today.
Wonderful. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I really want to hear your answer to Rogério's first question, which, I wonder myself. She's saying, what advice, and you may remember Rogério, she was here on our program. She's the Chief Compliance Officer of Latam Airlines.
Right.
So what advice would you give a company where the legal department insists on disclosing witness data in employment lawsuits in order to have a more robust defense? So in other words, this legal department in the company sort of has a little bit of a battle with the compliance department because they want to disclose witness data in employment lawsuits. So compliance investigated the situation, interviewed the witnesses, and promised protection and confidentiality. And the legal department wants to use that to have a better defense on employment lawsuits. Tough one.
That is a tough one. Well, I have to analyze this as a lawyer. I would go through decision points. I would start with one, is it even legal to release that information? Number one. If it's legal, then can we or should we? Well, if we can, then should we? I would look at the case. I would look at the potential financial risk if we lost the case. I would look at the potential reputational risk if we lost the case without this information and try to make a determination. Can we move forward and have a reasonable chance of success without the information? If we still need to use the information, I would first narrow the information as much as possible. But of course, we haven't got to the big question, which is now you're naming the witness. I understand that. And then I would get to number 4. I would sit down. Obviously, this has already occurred, but compliance and legal would have to sit down and try to narrow the information as much as possible. And the last step I would do is, okay, we've decided we cannot live without this information in this lawsuit. And I would go to that person and explain to them, we need to release your name. We need to release your information. We hope we get your approval to do so, and try to persuade them that it's in the company's best interest and it's in their best interest. I've never had the situation where I released someone's name that didn't want it released. So I've not faced that exact, but I would just try to go down a decision process and see, is it absolutely necessary to do this? If it is, how can we do it? In the United States, we would call it in camera, which means you release it to the court only, and it's kept confidential in court. The other side can't release it. Obviously, there are risks in that, but when you do something in that manner in the United States, it's pretty well respected. So is there a way to release the information to the court, either in private, in camera, as we would say here, or privately? Is there a way to release the information without releasing the person's name? That's going to be really tough. And then finally, if you have to release the information, can you still keep the person's identity confidential in the court proceedings up to and including testifying? And in the United States, what we would do is the courtroom would be cleared. You'd bring the witness in without naming them, and there would be some sort of in private, or what we want to call an in-camera proceeding. So that's how I would think about it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Viviane, we really don't have any more time. We try to be compliance here with punctuality. Cynthia, you want to say?
I was going to say, I'm surprised. Tom, I think this is one of the webinars that had the most level of engagement, and that we really, could have added another, 30 minutes to this one.
Yeah.
So maybe we could think, Isabel, the next one to also continue talking about AI.
Yeah, very interesting. But I have some housekeeping announcements here. One of them is, please, Tom, do share the examples of how to measure the culture. I think would be great. You can send it to me, and then I send to everyone also. And the memo, tone of the top, I love that because that's one of my favorite subjects also. I wanted to say that we've been trying to bring Tom Fox to give us another course here in Brazil. And every year I try hard. So I'm going to open my heart to all of you. Those of you who are interested in having Tom Fox here in Brazil for a course will have to help us bring him, because the dollar has skyrocketed, Tom. It's at 6 point something. Every day it changes a little bit, but it has gone over 6. I think the last time that you were here, it was 3, and he was already very expensive for the Brazilians. So now, those of you who are interested in a whole week of a course with Tom Fox, a variety of subjects and different types of, a little bit of a round table here, a class there, something like that, please let me know. And I will also ask your help to sort of, try to sponsor his trip here, because it's so expensive. And last but not least, I wanted you to tell us about your platform, the AI in compliance.
Yes. So I have, hopefully, I have a compliance handbook. It's now in its 5th edition. And as Isabel mentioned, unfortunately, the price in US dollars is high. And so when you get it to Brazilian reals, it's very high. And so what I've done is I've actually created a Tom handbook, Chat GPT. And so I can provide to you a GPT of my compliance handbook, and you can input any question, and hopefully you'll get an answer at. And it's going to be limited to only what's in the handbook. And let me see if I can actually share this. I'm not sure. I've never tried to share on Teams. So
I can do that to the group later. We can take care of that. I have the link. We've been enjoying.
Anyway, it's $200 US to get a license, unlimited use, and it can be a resource to you as opposed to buying the handbook and reading it the old-fashioned way.
Wonderful. Very good. Well, again, I want to thank Viviana O'Connor of Dover Feelings Systems, a dear client. We've been working together for many years in very interesting cases. And also want to thank my partner, Cynthia, and Tom. Our next Breakfast with Tom Fox is scheduled for March 12th. We're doing it on Wednesdays now, but we're not sure that this will fit the agenda of Tom's agenda, because it's 3 months away. But with that, I want to again give you the floor, Tom, to wish everyone happy holidays and 2025. I've done it myself, so I want to give you and Cynthia and Viviane an opportunity to do so.
Well, that's easy. Everyone have a great holiday season from the great state of Texas. Merry Christmas. My wife has turned our house into a winter wonderland. What you see behind you in my office is about 0.5% of what our house looks like. So I have Christmas music playing 24/7 in my house. I love this month.
Me too.
It's a great month to get together with friends, colleagues, family, and think about all the things that are important to all of us.
Thank you, Tom and Viviane. I look forward to reconnecting next year, and to our very loyal audience. I see many people that come to every single breakfast on this list. So thank you all.
Thank you again, Isabel, Tom, Cynthia, the great audience. It was a high-level discussion. We couldn't feel the time passing by, right? So that's a very strong indicative that it was a great discussion, and it was a great pleasure to me. So happy holiday season to everyone, and I look forward for next year.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Adios.